By a show of hands, who here, whether it's once in a while or almost every day, gets the urge to create something? Most people. It's human, right? So it doesn't matter if it's pottery or if it's writing like I do, or if around New Year's you get the sudden urge to crochet. Doesn't matter what the art form is. I have to tell my husband every Saturday that watching football is a creative pursuit, but it's not an art form. So who here, out of all those, if you care to admit it, that when you get that urge to create, that's exactly the time that the little voices start coming in that tells you why you shouldn't? Yeah, it doesn't matter if you don't want to admit it either. But that's completely human too. Very annoying, very human. The thing that we're the best at in terms of that voice is listening to it. Whether we call it imposter syndrome, whether we just call it the voice, we listen to it and we think that what it says is true. Because it usually says things like, what do you want to waste your time on that for? Or, yeah, this is going to be really bad. And because we're humans, sometimes we try and fight it back with things like common sense. Like, well, we've got to learn. There's nothing wrong with learning. What's that bad about being bad? This voice is very experienced in what it does. It will tell us, yeah, but if you're bad, then, and you make bad things, you're going to start thinking those bad things are good things, and you're going to get emboldened, and you're going to go out into the world, and you're going to show other people your art, and they're going to know that's bad, and they're going to laugh at you, and then you're going to cry until snot comes out of your nose. So I used to be one of those people. I started my writing career at the age of 6, and for the first 23 years of that, I pretty much just wrote when I felt inspired or felt that it was going to come out perfectly. So as you can imagine, I wasn't writing very much, and I definitely was learning absolutely nothing about the process of writing or about my creative practice. And it got to the point where I couldn't keep waiting anymore. I'd frustrated myself, and that frustration was worse than the fear that I was going to make something bad. So I just went for it. And in the 4 years of learning to make bad art, I've written 4 adult novels, 2 children's books, multiple short stories, and countless other things. And I really actually started to enjoy it. And because I would enjoy it, I'd go out and tell other people how much I was enjoying it. Is it any good, Gemma? No, it's terrible, but I'm absolutely loving it. And although they could Google many quotes from many writers who are much more further along in their career than me, they would always ask me, well, how do you do it? And I found that one thing would always work in getting through to them and getting them moving on their own journey, whatever their practice, and that was being honest. Because if there's one thing I am good at, it's being honest. So I'd like to be honest with you tonight in the attempt to persuade you that making bad art can be enjoyable, it's survivable, and it can be fun. So we'll probably just skip to just looking at my bad art and getting that over and done with, shall we? So, some things still surprise me. So, things like this. He wanted to shrug and shake his head at the same time. Like, what? I can see what's written under there, and even in context, it makes absolutely no sense. So, that's some of the worst of it out of the way. But what that does represent is the fact that I started. And that is always step 1. For some people, that's the worst bit. For some people, that's the best bit, whether it represents the empty blank page that suddenly you're going to put all of your fears down onto of how bad you really are, or whether that represents opportunity and you can get started, but it's the rest that you struggle with. That does represent a start. This is usually what my starts kind of look like. No idea, no idea, no idea. Because I think we lose perspective that the start has to be what we're going to end up with. It doesn't. Objectively, in that, I'm writing. Not writing a book, I'm writing notes to myself, but I'm still writing. The action to get going is by and far the worst, the best kryptonite that you can use against imposter syndrome. It does not like the action. So as long as you're sitting down and doing something, you've already started, even if it's nothing like the end product. So we're going, and sometimes we're not. I left this to watch the news, and now I have no idea. That is an honest note to myself, and my manuscripts are absolutely littered with this. And when I read it back, it's some of my favourite parts, because I've still done that thing. I've still sat down and kept going, no matter what it looked like. And it's completely human to wander away and get distracted. And we underestimate the points we should give ourselves for going back, even if I had to write that note in order to get back. So sometimes, if you keep showing up, it's going to feed you little nuggets, right? And sometimes those are nuggets of frustration. I am frustrated at having no idea where this is going. But sometimes, in pretty quick succession, it'll feed you a nugget of something else. So as you can see, this is genuinely, as you can see from the page break, genuinely directly what I've written underneath, being so frustrated that I had to write a note to myself. After a few months of teaching, she'd realised she could often sense that what the people in her class needed. Sometimes it was encouragement, sometimes it was demonstration, often it was just permission, and sometimes it was silence. It's stuff like this where I know I'm really onto the gold. And I know that for several reasons. The first one is, I know my subconscious mind can never come up with stuff like that in the first pass. That is only on the page because my subconscious, childlike, curious mind has decided to come to the forefront and feed me something, because I gave it the space to do that. And this is helpful when you occasionally find a nugget at the time of gold, because we can kind of piece that together and make it the whole way there. It would be a mistake to think, okay, we're onto the gold now, it's going to be perfect from now on. It's not. It's good, bad, overlaying, but we can get the whole way there. So there's still going to be some bad in there. I need to just write, except my hands hurt, and my eyes itch, and I'm tired and burnt out. That's genuinely what it feels like. I put that on the page. I'm still writing. We're still going. It's fine. But eventually, we might get to a point where none of this is what I planned, but a promise is a promise. And we keep showing up. We're still doing the thing. Even if we have to make notes about how we're getting it wrong most of the time. But eventually you'll get to the end. And I want to be honest about what the end looks like, because that's a completely different emotion altogether. So the first time I got to the end using this method of embracing the bad and the good, and the bad again, looked like this. Genuinely, when I finished my first full draft in this method. Now, I want you to just think about what that feels like for you in your art form. That moment where the child inside you doesn't care if it's bad or good, because it doesn't matter. It's finished. It exists. And you need to praise yourself for the fact that it exists because you put it into existence. And celebrate this part as much as possible, because then you're going to go on to the second part. I think most people think the second part is, right, now we get rid of all the bad. We cut out all of those notes that we wrote to ourselves and all of those drafts, and we make it good. There is a different second part that you need to do before that, which is so much more fun than just dealing with the bad, and that is acceptance. There's no point making art if we're not making it for ourselves. So we look at what we've made and we accept it for what it is. The good, the bad, the things that surprise you in a good way or a bad way. And we need to enjoy it as an audience first, because this is another part of the process where I get so much enjoyment, as you'll see. So, like I say, it can surprise you. So sometimes you thought it was bad and it actually turns out looking good. And you should celebrate that. For some reason, I've started celebrating with love hearts, even though I'm not a love heart kind of girl. And sometimes what felt okay actually turns out worse than you thought. I look at that now, and that was clearly my reaction in that moment, and that's fine. But when I look at that note that I made now, I think about 10-year-old me who would sit in a supermarket cafe plotting out my world building for my Harry Potter rip-off novel. And she would not care if that was good or bad. She would, what do you mean you put words on paper? What do you mean you've got a computer to put words on paper? This is brilliant. So I celebrate that though. That can be deleted. It's fine. But I still made that thing. And I kind of enjoy it when it's a little bit bad. And then things like this remind me what we do it for. So objectively, someone could say, some people would beat themselves up that the handwriting is bad. That's the least of my concerns. But if you can't read it, that says, this is just my favourite thing about them and always feels nostalgic to read. Because if I can enjoy that art form for not only what it is, but what it reminds me of when I made it, whether it was good or bad, I hope that's good because it is highlighted in green, then you cannot beat a feeling like that. In the surprises, there'll also be some ambiguous moments. So as you can see, this is highlighted and underlined, several colours of anticipation. I've still yet to decide if that's absolute genius or makes absolutely no sense at all. That's for future me to worry about. But I enjoy it anyway, because you've got to learn to laugh about it. I'll let you laugh with me, you're invited to, that's fine. Sometimes I do laugh at myself. I quite enjoy that there's another love heart there, but we're looking at the lol, even though I'm the type of person who's probably said or typed lol 3 times in my entire life. Still don't know if that's a sarcastic lol, but proof that you can laugh at yourself. And all of these help us find the gold, whether we were looking for it or not. Mark hated stories. We're not perfect the first time, so we'll correct that. Mark hated stories. The first time he'd ever sat down in a psychiatrist's chair, not the therapists and doctors and GPs that he'd been used to before, she asked him what his story was. Some of that makes it worth it somehow. And if it doesn't, then this does. Because I got this, and this, and this. And 6-year-old me would lose her mind if she knew that I'd made this massive pile of papers that just consumed my house, in all honesty. They're just piled up everywhere. Because 32-year-old me still wants to lose my mind that this is something that I can do on a whim if I wanted to. The thing about making bad art and enjoying it in this way is that it starts to seep out into other parts of your life. And I know it's very easy for me to stand here with bits that I've curated that I want to show you, and in an art form where I can easily hit delete, which you can see I don't, because I don't want to. So I want to tell you one more story, if you'll let me. So 2 weeks ago today, I stood on this very stage, not on the carpet, stood on this stage and had my very first rehearsal with absolutely no knowledge, but a few notes I'd made on my phone and the knowledge that I could go on about this for hours and hours and hours. And I'd convinced myself several times over the weekend that I needed to just risk it. I needed to make it bad because there was just something missing. And if I could stand up here and one thing could come from that subconscious that knows what it's doing, one nugget of gold that I never would have come up with any other way, then it would have been worth it. So I stood up here and I did a full 15 minutes ramble. I had an audience of 1, which is 1 more than I usually have when I'm making bad art. And I went for it. And did I turn up a nugget of gold? No, absolutely not. I used to be a theatre kid and I don't think I've ever produced something so bad on stage before. So got down from the stage. I did a 10-minute justification on, it's all part of the process, it had to be bad, it's going to be fine when we get there. And then I drove to the nearest DIY shop and I bought a tester pot of yellow paint because that's what millennial women do in an emotional crisis. And then the next day I did one of them cries where the snot comes out of my nose because I thought, this is going to be terrible. My own process doesn't work for me. But if nothing else, it got me this story. And it got me further proof that even if you're not turning up nuggets at the time, that making bad art is always worth it and being honest about the process. So I hope that if I can stand up here and say all of this and show you all of these things with as much honesty as I have to give, that when you're at home and you feel a little urge to maybe just try something and maybe be bad at it, no matter how long you're bad at it, that when you've not got an audience, you can say, yeah, I could probably give that a go. You might still get the voice, but you can push that to the side, because I'm starting to think that you can learn how to enjoy yourself and find enjoyment in what you do. What constitutes bad art out there and what constitutes bad art in here is constantly evolving. And all I ask is that you turn up for the evolution to find out what you have to say. I'm going to leave you with my brand new favourite quote from the author Austin Kleon, which is, there's no such thing as good art and bad art. It's just art worth stealing and art not worth stealing. But if it's not worth stealing today, then maybe it's worth stealing tomorrow. And that made me think, maybe I just make the thing so I can steal from myself later. And if I'm not stealing from it initially, maybe I needed to make it so I can steal from it tomorrow. All of this process is still going to be annoying, it's still going to be frustrating, but it's going to be joyful. And I don't know any other way. If you find any other way, please do let me know. But I can tell you that this is a joyful way. So, please show up. Do the thing. Fail fast, learn quick. Laugh at your own jokes. Laugh at my jokes, that's fine. Find some gold, but please do make bad art. Thank you.